Howdy, guys, and welcome to night 79 of Big Brother Season 23's Overnight Feeds Recaps. And welcome to Cliff Notes from outside the Big Brother house. All right, we've got our final three. It wasn't necessarily easy, predictable, maybe a little bit, but we had a little drama on the way. And let's talk about that before we talk about the overnight feeds. So one of the more exciting live evictions on Big Brother, right? It certainly was for me. We ended up getting a blindside. Now, most blindsides in this game here recently seemed not to ever happen because the evictee gets tipped off right before the show starts, or at some point before the show, and we never see it. Not tonight. No, not tonight. Xavier ends up keeping the nominations the same. No huge surprise there, which means that Big D is the one casting the decision on who makes it to final three and who gets booted out and heads over to jury. He has to pick between Azah and Kyland, and as agreed upon, everyone was a little worried about whether Big D would or wouldn't, but he follows through with the agreement. He sends Kyland out the door, and Kyland doesn't handle it well. Kyland certainly, he may have had some little suspicions, but he certainly seemed to still think that he was going to be the person that was going to stay into the final three. He doesn't handle it well. He as he walks out the door starts challenging primarily Xavier about what happened, and Xavier really doesn't want to get into an argument with him, but Kyland just keeps insisting. So eventually Xavier says, "Hey, Kyland, you would have been all over Big D if you'd known ahead of time. That's why we couldn't tell you." I don't know if Kyland was more upset that he didn't get the heads up or that he got booted. I have a feeling he's upset he got booted, and he's upset he didn't get the heads up because he knows he could have maybe done something to change Big D's mind and didn't get that option, which is a whole reason that Xavier didn't want to tell him. I understand it. He's upset. He's heading out the door. Where Kyland crossed the line a little bit is he then starts talking to Xavier about Xavier's nephew, how Xavier is raising him not to be a coward, and you named him after Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant never would have stepped back from a challenge, and really kind of getting in Xavier's face, asking these questions, and Xavier's not happy. Xavier's upset. He squares up to Kyland. At one point, it looked like, I don't think fists were going to get thrown, but it certainly looked like there could have been some chest bumping and things like that. And Julie's quickly, Kyland, get out of here. Come on in here. At one point, he goes back in, and I don't know if they thought he was getting ready to challenge Xavier or what, but he's just grabbing his water bottle. He gets out of there and leaves. It was difficult. And what's so funny, Big D is trying to apologize, saying, "Look, I knew I couldn't beat you, but I could beat Azah," which Azah later says, "Yeah, thanks for dragging me," as you boot him out the door as well. But Big D's trying to defend himself and all that. Kyland didn't really care about Big D. He was all about Xavier. He knew where the decisions were being made, and he knew it was all Xavier that was behind all of this. And so he walks out the door, but not without getting in those last minute digs and really creating some animosity between him and Xavier that was unnecessary. So here's the thing. Kyland was wrong to bring that up about Xavier's nephew and being cowards, how he raises them. He was wrong to bring it up. But we as viewers have been begging to get some drama, some entertainment in this house, some blindsides. We want to see blindsides, but that blindside came at the expense of a player who was caught by surprise, who just realized that they aren't going to potentially win $750,000. Rather than being angry with Kyland, I'm just disappointed at how it was handled. But I think Kyland's going to have a chance to reflect, regret, and eventually apologize. I think he'll realize, and at some point, I think he and Xavier after the show will have a chance to talk, and I think he's going to regret the way things were said. But remember, these are real people dealing with more stress and more money at stake than at any other point in their lives, for the most part, and they're playing a game for our entertainment. So don't spend too much time judging any of these game show contestants, because that's all that we are, game show contestants. So don't spend too much of your time judging them, and don't judge an overall person based on some of the things that happened inside a very stressful house while playing a game that is designed to sometimes bring out the absolute worst in people. That's what Big Brother does, right? And it's for our entertainment. So please, just, these are regular people. Always keep that in mind. I know Kylan, when he gets out of that house, he's going to face a firestorm of comments, of judging everything else on Twitter and other social media. And I get it. And it's part of the game. You got to have thick skin if you're going to go in there. But, you know, he was wrong, but that doesn't mean that as a person, he should have that held over his head for the rest of his life. All right. With that being said, I'm off my soapbox. Yeah, he was wrong. But I sympathize with everything that takes place in that house because I understand the stresses. I know what goes on. All right. With that being said, the feeds finally come on about 11 o'clock or so, Big Brother time last night. So we finally get the feeds back. We see Azah in the shower and Big D talking to her. Now, probably the most important information that I'm going to give y'all about what happened overnight in the conversations. Same old, rehashing things that have happened on. Now, the most important information is that we learned that they did have the first round of the final three competition. Yes, they've already had it. Azah's in the shower. Big D comes in talking to her, and we find out they've had the first round, and the winner is, to no one's surprise, Xavier wins the first round, which is typically a physical competition of some sort. And Xavier's won that, which means Xavier doesn't compete in round two. That'll just be Azah and Big D, and they're talking about that a little bit, that they're going to face off against each other. And then Xavier, who will face off against whoever wins round two. The winner of that then decides who they want to take with them to sit in the final two chairs. So Xavier is now guaranteed a spot in the very final competition. This is Xavier's game, right? At this point, it's got to be Xavier who wins this thing, I would think. Now, I guess it's possible Big D or Azah will win the next round of the competition. One of them has to win, right? Either Azah gets to double her win total for the season, or Big D gets his first victory of the season. I don't know. These two, they're going to figure out some way that neither one of them wins the competition when they're the only two competing. I just see it. But now, one of them will face off against Xavier. And I guess in that final round, it is possible one of them could get it right. But I'm not betting on that. I'm betting on Xavier to win the final one, to take whoever, because it's not going to matter at that point. But they're talking about that a little bit. They're talking about how they're going to face off against each other. Meanwhile, Xavier's upstairs pacing and saying, just one more comp. He understands. He's that close, so close to winning this whole thing. We've got Azah and Xavier talking. Azah is saying that she believes that Kylan's biggest mistake was booting Tiffany in the final six. He thinks that Tiffany really wanted to keep Kylan as long as possible because Kylan would be a bigger target than Tiffany, kind of a meat shield. And so she would have wanted to keep him as long as possible. Big D is saying, look, Kylan really should have voted out Hannah and kept Tiffany for similar reasons. Would it have really mattered, given how comfortable these two are, Azah and Big D, with having Xavier staying in the house? Would it have really mattered exactly what the order was? I don't think so. Short of Kylan winning every competition from final six onwards, veto or HOH, some combination, I don't think it would have mattered. What probably mattered more than anything else was Kylan trusting Xavier too much to watch out for him. It's not so much who he was booting out, the order of it. It's more that Kylan wasn't trying to boot Xavier, and I think that was his downfall. All right, we've got Big D mentioning, I'm a little chief, does that work? Big D mentions that they saw their family video. They saw their families, and I think he's talking about family videos that they got to watch at some point while the feeds were still down. We never got family videos this my season. Now, my family filmed one and sent it in, but for some unknown reason during our season, none of us house guests ever got to actually watch them while they were in the house. I never knew why that was the case. Oh, I've been so happy to see a family video. It didn't happen for us, but it did happen for the final three. They got to watch it. Now, I don't know if it was right before the HOH competition or right after. Probably right before, I have a feeling. But they got to see their families. I'm sure that was a welcome relief after some of the stress of the evictions and all that. They got to see their families. That's really cool. I guess we'll see it on the episodes. Big Brother wanted to save that so we'd see it on the episodes instead of watching on the live feed. So we'll get to see it. All right, we've got everyone ragging on Kylan now. I have a feeling between now and next Wednesday, we are going to see a rehash over and over about everything Kylan did wrong, everything that these three people did right. Lots of reenactments of him getting booted. We're going to see it over and over again. So they're all ragging on Kylan. Big D saying, yeah, Kylan was just a user. He was using me as a pawn, but I showed him. Azza saying Kylan wasn't transparent with her. She always tried to be transparent with him, but instead he wouldn't give her any information. She mentions that he wanted her to be a part of a Final Four, but he wouldn't say who else was in the Final Four. And meanwhile, he was demanding from her the names of all the people she was targeting. Kylan was one of these that really was a seeker, a sponge of information, right? So she's saying, yeah, he wasn't transparent. He wasn't. He didn't go both ways with Kylan. Azza is also talking about them being in the Final Three, and she's saying Kylan said I didn't deserve to be in the Final Three, and she's saying anyone who makes it to the Final Three deserves it. That's all there is. No one deserves it more than anyone else to get to the Final Three, get to the Final Two chairs as well. I get what she's saying. There's a lot of different paths to get to these Final Two, Final Three spots. I get that, and results do speak for themselves. But some people get to a Final Two because they controlled the game. They made lots of decisions. They took risk when necessary. There's a lot of things that they actively did to get to that Final Two position. Others get there out of a combination of luck or being a complete non-threat to win the overall Big Brother title, or because of outside influences, outside factors, outside objectives. There's a lot of reasons that some people sometimes can get to the end that involves them being a lot more reactive than actually taking actions themselves. And I do think, with that being said, some people deserve to get to those Final Two spots more so than others do. Yes, but once you get there, you did what it took. But some people have a lot more responsibility for getting there than others, right? I think that's the case. All right, we've got Azza again telling Big D that it seems like Big D thinks that she only made it to Final Three because of him, that he drug her along. We've heard that. He's tried to back off that statement, but we know that's what he thinks. We've seen it in the diary rooms. We've seen he's kind of mentioned it to her as well, unfortunately. Big D at that point saying, look, I don't want to compare stats with you. Azza, we made it to Final Three. I don't want to compare stats. Well, I wouldn't want to be comparing stats either if my stats started off with 0-4 anything. Yeah, so yeah, he doesn't want to compare stats. He better be prepared, because stats will be compared if he makes it to the Final Two chair and is talking in front of the jury. Azza's still upset that Kylan used the veto on her HOH without asking her first. Now remember, this was a double eviction. There wasn't a lot of time to do a lot of asking, permissions, requesting, etc. But she's upset with that. She said, I was so respectful to Kylan during his last HOH, and he didn't show that same respect to me when I had HOH. Okay. They're continuing to gripe about how Kylan treated them. Big D is reenacting Kylan leaving. There's a question about a ring, and did he have a ring of Big D's that maybe he left behind, maybe he took? I never could exactly pick up on that, but some kind of ring they're talking about as well. Xavier at one point says, Kylan got. Yes, indeed, Kylan did indeed got, I guess. All right, Xavier saying that the master manipulator, the Dr. Will of the season, is now in jury, which confuses me, because I thought Big D was the Dr. Will of this season. Same competition record and all of that. But apparently the real Dr. Will was Kylan, and Big D's just an impersonator, a counterfeit Dr. Will, as you would. All right, we've got Azza. She's saying that she doesn't think Kylan's going to be able to sway the jury. Just an FYI to you guys who may not be aware of it, Final Four does not go to the jury house. Final Four has very limited ability to even talk to the other jury members. Kylan, as soon as the eviction was over, probably got obviously sent out of the house, probably did a real quick visit with producers, psychologists, people like that. He's probably doing press stuff today. After that, at least during my season, did jury roundtable, but you really have very little time to talk to the jurors except while you're on camera. And then he'll be sequestered away from the other jurors for the rest of the week. All the jurors from this point on probably are sequestered away from each other. no more talking until finale night. So yeah, Kylan's not going to get a chance to talk to the jury, much less really sway the jury. So Oz is mentioning that, and she's right. He won't have that chance. There's talk about the competition that was held last night. Something involved hanging on, water spraying, some kind of endurance competition. I'm picturing either like when they hung from the ropes with the circus competition, or during my season, we had that poised on ivy where you hung onto the ropes with your feet and your legs, something along those lines where you had to hang on. Apparently Big D was out first. What a shocker. But yeah, they had some kind of competition like that. Xavier's saying the next round will be a combination of skills and athletic. Big D's not real happy to hear that. And then finally, Xavier says final three is a mental competition that you can't prepare for. Well, he's wrong on that. Wrong. Part three of the competition, it's a mental competition, but also it can certainly be a memory competition. During my season, it all involved the pictures, the memory wall pictures. Who was wearing what color, who was wearing glasses, who wasn't. A lot of things that you could learn and be better at by studying that memory wall. So these house guests better still be practicing their dates, events, names, all everything else, because that's probably what we'll see in the final three. Big D is asking, saying, so is a round two of this competition going to be on Saturday, tomorrow? Could be. Feeds cut. We never really hear an answer, but that seems likely that we may get that tomorrow. And then finally talk about the cookout. Oz is saying that she liked the different Black people's backgrounds on the show this season. I think casting did a great job. I liked all the house guest backgrounds this season. All right, we've got Xavier confirming that Kylan did indeed pack his bags before the show. Remember, at one point, Kylan saying, "I don't really need to pack thoroughly, do I?" And Xavier said, "Nah, you're good." Well, maybe not so much, but he confirms that yeah, Kylan did actually pack before he headed out of the house. He's also talking about what Kylan said about him and his nephew and everything. And he's saying, look, it's God's position to judge. I'm not judging. I won't forget, but I will forgive. They'll work it out. I truly think it was heat of the moment. Once they have a chance, not during the finale. I think it'll be after that. But I think once they get a chance to visit, they'll hash this out. I expect that. And finally, Big D saying, look, as long as the selfish players, Tiffany and Kylan, went home, I'm okay with however it works out from this point onwards. Big D spent a lot of time saying, I'm happy to win, just finish up in second place. Well, I'm sure he probably is. I'm sure he'd rather have $750,000, but he and Oz have to think, right, that if they're in the seat next to Xavier, they're not winning this thing. I don't think any of them have the gab of speech that's going to allow them to somehow sway the jury against Xavier. I'm really looking forward to the speeches they're going to throw out, though. We'll see. But yeah, Big D saying, look, we got the selfish people out for this point going forward. I'm good. And so with that being said, lights out around 2:00 or so. We've got our final three, Ozza, Big D, and Xavier. There's certainly a odds-on favorite to win this whole thing, but things could happen. We shall see. Someone's going to win a competition that hadn't won a lot of competition so far, and then we'll see what happens after that. Guys, it's a Friday. Woo! Y'all enjoy y'all's Friday. Get ready for the weekend. I will be back tomorrow morning to give y'all an update. Maybe they'll have the second round of competition today. Probably not, but we'll see. But until then, y'all have a fantastic Friday. I will talk to y'all tomorrow. Cheers, my friends. SKD 143. Bye.